Hi, Tom Manke, Friends Community News and Views. I'm sitting with Karl Manke, local author and barber extraordinaire. And Karl is 74 years old, and he's probably has the most knowledge on the history of Owosso on cruising of anyone. And so we're going to interview Karl today. And Karl, can you just tell us the history? Let's go back to when it first started. Most of us know about the 80s and 90s and such, but can you tell us about when it first started and why it started?
Yeah, it started about 1956. Particularly at that time, World War II was over with. We had discretionary money. The community was basically a General Motors community with good wages, and we had a lot of second cars, and young people were beginning to be able to get the family car, the extra one, for their own recreation. And at that time, gas was, and if it'd be comparable to the same price today. As a matter of fact, then at that period, if you took everything from then and multiplied it by about 10, you'd come up with the approximate price of things today, but that's a whole other issue. Gas was about 27 cents, 25 cents, 26 cents. And half a tank of gas, might cost you maybe $2.50, and cruise for half the night. And it started with the El Forno, I believe. The El Forno restaurant was a pizza parlor that came on about 1956, 1955, 1956, in the fall, as I recall. And it was right on the corner where White's Bakery was right next door. And I believe there's a mortgage company in there now, and maybe a realty company or something of that sort. It's right across from the Sonic Lodge on the corner.
So that'd be Washington and
Mason, right on the corner. And it was at that time, it was owned by a guy by the name of Bob Hotelling. And he brought that from Lansing. It was called the El Forno. As a matter of fact, I believe the El Forno was still in East Lansing. They sort of specialized in what was referred to as pizza pie. And it was kind of a funny entrance for people in Owosso. They wanted to know if had you ever eaten any of that pizza pie. Well, it ended up that it was now just called pizza, but in the beginning it had that pie name to it. Well, it started, in that particular part of town, it began to center young people there. It's kind of a hangout. And along with that, at that same time, Albert Lieberman and his family, his mother and his dad, Sam Lieberman, Celia Lieberman, opened a restaurant out on East 21. And several of those were out there. Roy Thompson opened one out on East 21. Then the expansion of cruising was to go from one of these hot spots where teenagers hung out to another one. So it would start at the El Forno on Mason Street in Washington. It would go down Washington Street because around the corner was another drive-in, the Senate drive-in. And it was down the way on Crun Avenue, about where, I believe it's probably about where the gun shop is now, where Langdon has his gun shop. It seems like it was right in there someplace.
Next, in the area where Tom's Lounge was, out on Harrison Street?
Yeah, that was another one. Tom's Lounge was another one. But then you went across the old Oakwood Street Bridge after you hit those two places, and you cruised down to Main Street and then out Main Street to the other drive-ins that were out that way. And you made it took about, probably a good 15 minutes to make that complete circle and that circuit. So then you would come back to the El Forno and cruise around that 2 or 3 times and, check everything out, make sure there weren't any good-looking chicks walking down the street and whatever.
Now, what about the restaurant where the Hickory Lounge is now on Corona Avenue?
Yeah, that was a drive-in also. Originally, it was a drive-in. It was called Tom's, you know, and then it became Tom's Lounge. But it was a drive-in. All of those places were. Roy Thompson had one over there too, originally.
What about Rohax? That's one a lot of people remember yet from the 60s and 70s was Rohax.
Yeah, Al Rohack and his wife had a restaurant. Originally, they started behind Rohack's restaurant called Al's Hideaway, and it was just a little trailer back there, and he sold hamburgers out of the window for 15 cents. And I can remember our family, my mom would, on Friday night, she'd go out there and get a bag of hamburgers for 15 cents, and we thought that was a pretty big deal. But then Al, he started a restaurant out on East 21. And he put pinball machines in there, and that it was another draw. And so, yeah, it was about a 15-minute circuit, to make that all the way around. The El Forno lasted with that cruising thing until they closed. But the cruising thing, it became kind of a...
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead and